You don't struggle to focus. You struggle to focus without pressure, and that's a completely different problem, because when a deadline hits, you don't just try harder, you become a completely different person, faster, sharper, decisive, like the version of you that's been missing all week suddenly shows up. No hesitation, no second guessing, no stalling. You just execute. So if that version of you already exists, why can't you access it on a normal day? Why does it only show up when something's on the line? Because most people think the answer is discipline. I just need to be more consistent. I just need to try harder. But that doesn't make sense, because discipline doesn't switch on instantly, and yet yours does, right on cue, every time there's pressure. So something else is happening here, isn't it? Something you haven't been told. Let me show you what it actually feels like. You sit down to work and nothing is wrong, the task is clear, you know what to do, but you don't start. Instead, there's this pause, not confusion, not complexity, just resistance. You hover, you delay, you almost begin, but you don't. And the longer you sit there, the harder it becomes to start. Not because the work changed, but because now you're fighting yourself. Then the deadline gets close and everything changes. No hesitation, no overthinking, no resistance. You just go. And this is where most people get it wrong. They look at that version of themselves and say, why can't I just be like that all the time? But that version of you isn't more disciplined. And if you miss this, you'll keep solving the wrong problem, because what's actually changing there isn't what you think. You see, this can change everything, because what you're experiencing isn't a motivation problem. It's a dependence on urgency. Your brain has learned no pressure equals no action. Pressure equals instant focus. And once that loop is built, it becomes your default position. But this is the real problem. Urgency doesn't just increase focus. It removes friction. Under pressure, you stop trying to do things perfectly. You stop weighing every option. You stop asking, what should I do? You already know, and now you just act. So when there's no urgency, all that friction comes back and it feels like low motivation, lack of discipline, procrastination. But it's not. It's unresolved friction with no trigger to override it. Let me show you something subtle. When you're working under pressure, you're not just reacting to a deadline, you're reacting to a dopamine spike. That pressure creates urgency, stakes, consequences, and your brain responds with focus and clarity and action. And here's where this gets even more interesting. Your brain starts to rely on that spike. So without it, everything feels flat, hard to start, hard to care, hard to move. And this is why just start earlier doesn't work, because earlier you don't have the chemical environment required to act. So you fall into a loop. You delay, pressure builds, something snaps, and then you can act. And then you tell yourself, see, I work best like this. And over time, this trains you to believe I work best under pressure. But you don't. You just only work under pressure. And this is where most people go wrong. They try to remove procrastination, but that doesn't solve the problem, because procrastination isn't the issue. It's the gap between no pressure and action. So the real question becomes, how do you create action without needing urgency? And this is where the shift happens, because you don't need more discipline. You need a different starting mechanism. So instead of waiting for pressure, you need a different trigger. Something small, controlled, repeatable. I call it a dopamine anchor. Instead of waiting for pressure to create momentum, you create a small, controlled trigger that gets you moving. But here's where people mess this up. They think, okay, I'll just do 5 minutes. And that can work, but only if it's set up properly. Because the goal isn't time, the goal is activation. So instead of saying, I'll work for 5 minutes, you do this. You define a clear entry point. One action, not a project, not a task list. One action. Open the document. Write one sentence. Not 10, not a paragraph. One. Here's where this gets super powerful. That action becomes your anchor. It removes ambiguity, and your brain no longer needs urgency to decide what to do, because most of your resistance isn't about doing the work. It's about starting without clarity. And this does change everything, because now you're not relying on pressure. You're relying on a repeatable trigger. But this is also where a lot of people get stuck again, because even if you fix this, you might still feel overwhelmed, unsure where to begin, pulled in too many directions. And this is the part nobody talks about. Your inability to start is not one thing, it's everything hitting at once. Too many options, no clear starting point, mental resistance pulling you back, and no structure to catch you. So when urgency isn't there, everything comes back at once. And this is exactly why I built the momentum reset method, not as a productivity system, but as a way to remove the blocks that stop you starting. Because once you understand this, you stop trying to push harder and start fixing the actual problem. You don't need more pressure. You need a way to begin without it. And once you can do that, everything changes. You stop waiting for the last minute. You stop relying on stress to push you through. You stop proving to yourself that you could have done it earlier. You don't wait. You don't build it up. You don't negotiate with yourself. You just start. If this is something you recognize in yourself, you're not broken. You've just trained your brain to depend on urgency, and that can be unlearned. If you want more videos like this, subscribe to the channel, that would be awesome. And next, you need to understand something even more important. Why pressure actually makes you less productive, even when it feels like it works. Watch that next.